I saw this tweet yesterday that was extremely complimentary of Jose Altuve, and I got pissed off about it. It reads, Jose Altuve with a 298, 387, 531 slash line this season, 28 homers, 18 steals on 9 attempts, and 100 runs for his career, has the following numbers. 1,929 hits, 983 runs, 192 homers, 279 steals, a 307 lifetime average, 3 batting titles, led the American League in hits 4 times, 5 Silver Sluggers, picked for 8 All-Star teams. Why should I be mad about a tweet like that, right? Well, it came from Buster Olney. And all of a sudden, it seems like we're getting a bit of whitewashing or mea culpa for Jose Altuve after he got absolutely slandered over the course of the Astros sign-stealing scandal. There's a lot we'll never know about that sign-stealing scandal. I don't know if I'm naive in believing Carlos Correa, who was so emphatic in his defense of Jose Altuve, and some of the other Astros who said, like, Altuve was the guy who was pissed off whenever we tried to give him an edge by tipping off the pitches. I want to believe it. Skeptical, cynical person in me should probably say, nah, I don't know. But Altuve was slandered by a biased Yankees Twitter account, John Boy Media, who zoomed in on a bunched part of his jersey and emphatically declared that a buzzer was there. And that led to Altuve being asked about, like, why he doesn't like his jersey to get ripped off, a weird defense as to why he doesn't like his jersey ripped off by, I think Carlos Correa was the only one to publicly face it. But the guy got slandered, and he got ripped along with the rest of the Astros, but he specifically, despite being as awesome as he was from 2014 to 2017, where he led the American League in hits all 4 years and also led the American League in steals the first 2 of those years, 2014 and 2015, he was slandered at a level that steroid-era players weren't. Were people really, and let's go back in time, we didn't have social media, were people really outraged about, say, Barry Bonds and how dominant he was? Did people ever say to themselves, like, this guy clearly is a disgusting, despicable person? Maybe people that write about baseball because they didn't like their one-on-one interactions with him. But Barry Bonds was always appreciated as one of the best in the game. You could say the same thing about a lot of the steroid-era players. Maybe not so much Sammy Sosa, but I think Mark McGwire still got his due for what he was doing in Oakland before that with Jose Canseco, and, of course, for what he did with the St. Louis Cardinals. I think Rafael Palmeiro got ripped because he lied to Congress. They lied to us. Is that really the end of the world? But Altuve got completely destroyed in this Astros sign-stealing scandal. And I don't think a lot of people that covered baseball nationally did anything remotely enough to defend the guy, even when there were people that were saying that he didn't do anything. And again, maybe I'm naive or something like that. I'm of the belief, though, that much like in the steroid era, a lot of people were doing it, that a lot of people were stealing signs. And Altuve specifically got crushed more than anyone. When I was up in Seattle, the amount of disrespect that was shown to Altuve up there pissed me off, and I didn't know what to do. Here I am working at a Seattle sports radio station, and whenever I spoke about the Astros, and I defended them regularly when I was on that program, saying, like, I know for a fact other teams were doing this. Like, I talked with Lance McCullers, who said that the Dodgers were so paranoid of sign stealing that that the Astros were doing because they were doing the same thing themselves. And there was so much cross-ups in Game 7 of the 2017 World Series. Go back and watch it and see all the wild pitches and all the weird things that happened over the course of that game in particular. Like, both teams were doing something in that game. The Astros obviously were using a trash can, but it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different when the other team is doing the same thing. I don't know. I feel like maybe the playing field's a little bit leveled. But Altuve regularly has been just smeared. And now all of a sudden the national writers are like, wow, Altuve's had a good career. He had a good career before the sign-stealing scandal took place. Like, this was the first good player on the Astros starting in 2014. Like, the first definitively awesome player. And now all of a sudden, like, people are walking it back. Well, the damage is done. You see people in any other city, and you ask them about Jose Altuve, And a lot of them will growl, raise an eyebrow. And there's a part of me which, as a person who follows the Astros, a person who roots for the Astros, who says, like, who cares what, the sheep are saying about the lion? But at the same time, he was dragged in a way along with the rest of this team that I felt merited at least some defense or at least some follow-up. And instead, you had a lot of writers who I think see things through a from New York perspective that kind of sat back and did nothing. That tweet by Buster Olney, to me, is a walking it back moment. And I didn't like it. I really didn't. It pissed me off. He's finally complimenting him all these years later. The damage is done. People are now looking at Jose Altuve as if he is not a great player. And I mean, I think there's a strong case to be made that he's the best Astro in team history because of the World Series that he won and because of what he was able to do, helping change the culture of this franchise. This was a guy who I remember in 2014 had said, like, look, we're approaching things this next year. We're in the playoffs. He said that the year before. I mean, nuts. But because of the way that I think a lot of people kind of just stood idly by and were like, yeah, whatever, I'm not going to do my due diligence. Screw that team. Screw the cheaters. Here we are.